question that you had was you can ask for concessions during an option period, correct? The answer is yes. That's one of the benefits to the option period. So one benefit to the option period is that you get extra time to do your due diligence. The other benefit to the option period is to say, hey, these things have changed, like it's going to cost more money for me to fix, et cetera. We found out in the inspection that this is broken, that's broken, and this third thing's broken. Right. So what I'd like to do is request an amendment to reduce the purchase price of the house. There's a couple of ways that you can go about this. Concessions, more formally, concessions typically means crediting money to you at close. So let's say you're buying a turnkey property at $100,000 and you have to bring 20% down. Right. So you got to bring $20,000, and let's say your closing cost is 3%. Right. So let's say it's a $23,000 date that you got to bring. You got to bring that to the closing table. But in your inspection, you found out some things that are going to cost $4,000 to fix. Right. So you ask them, hey, I'd like $4,000 at close. Right. And they say, yes, that's fine. What that means is instead of you bringing $23,000 to close, now you only have to bring $19,000 to close. And there's a benefit there because your return on your investment is a function of two numbers. Right. It's a function of what your return is versus what your investment is. So if you can decrease the denominator, the overall number goes up. Right. The return is going to be what it's going to be. But if you can decrease your investment, then that's great. That allows for a higher return. Right. So that's something you can do. Now, one thing to note is if you're using a lender in that turnkey situation, for example, most of the time a lender is going to cap the amount of true concessions, like money credited back to you at closing, at 2 or 3%. So you might ask your lender and get some input from them on what that number is. If it's a conventional loan, I want to say it's actually formally, it has to be 3% or less. And the reason they do this is so that you can't just go, buy a $100,000 property and then ask for $40,000 at closing, because it's really a $60,000 property, right? But that protects essentially the integrity of comps, right? Let's say that you sold to a buddy a property that's right next to one of your properties, and you sold it for twice as much as it is, and then you credited back at closing, half of that cost. Right? Now you go to an appraiser and you say, hey, here's a comp, check this comp out. It's exact same floor plan, exact same everything. And then you end up using that comp to get more money, right? That's what they're protecting against. They're one of the things that they're protecting against. But what you can do is you can decrease the price. So let's say instead, if you wanted $10,000 in concessions on a $100,000 purchase, that's 10%, right? That's pretty substantial. So instead, what you could do is decrease the purchase price to say $92,000, and then have a few $1,000s actually in formal concessions credited to you. What I like to do is I like to maximize the amount of concessions paid to me at closing, because it reduces my closing costs, reduces my investment for my cash on cash return or my return on investment. I want to reduce my total investment up front as much as reasonably possible. And one of the ways to do that is with concessions. The other reason I do that is if I lower the purchase price, I'm spreading that purchase price out over 30 years. That's not exactly, it changes my payment a little bit, but the difference between $1,000 over 30 years and $1,000 in my pocket right now is pretty substantial to me. And so I want that money in my pocket right now. But that is limited at a 2 or 3% depending on your lender. So that's something to consider. Hopefully that's something that'll help you in your property evaluations and lending conversations moving forward.